Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here, and thank you as always for taking the time to tune in today. And today I'm delighted to be joined by clarity consultant and developer of the Neuro Linguistic Somatic Experience, the NLSE, Kyle Smith. Kyle assists in guiding wellness seekers to a better life experience through a combination of proven holistic techniques called storywork and breathwork, and combining them to create the NLSE. Kyle's life journey took him through some tough times that culminated in his re-emergence with clarity and fulfillment through NLSE. It's Kyle's continuous passion to share the gift of feeling well and to empower his clients with knowledge on how to do so. His mission is to defeat the victim mentality through a practical mindset coaching system for coaches, teachers, leaders, and influencers who want to defeat the negative narrative and empower people in any walk of life to become more action prone, more in control of their lives, and to optimize their mental well-being. Wow, that is a lot. Kyle, thank you very, very much for coming on the show today.
My pleasure, dude. And you crushed that intro, man.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's all your fantastic work that you've done today. So let's start at the beginning, Kyle. What was the main points of your journey that got you to a point where one, you needed something like NLSE to come into your life to be able to create the life that you're leading now?
Totally. Damn, great question for a beginner. Freaking awesome. So, uh, I refer to my life as before World Stuff Smarter and after World Stuff Smarter,
Yeah.
and that's 2016. And that was the time where I made a real decisive decision, I was decisive about where I wanted to go. Prior to that, I did not have a very high regard for myself. I had little self-esteem, which means I had no esteem for myself at all. And then it was low respect. I could not trust my reliability. I did not have confidence in my competence. And because I did not have a very constructive, loving, compassionate, while also authoritative relationship with myself, it also veered into my other relationships as well.
Yeah.
So it was by chance where I, as a character, have went to the point where the external world was reflecting my internal world.
Right.
And I did not like how that was looking or feeling,
Yeah.
and it it got to a point where it was more. I was just pissed off with myself. I was just
Right.
pissed off for repeating the same behaviors, habits, narratives, thoughts, stories, utilizing the exact same memories of my past to grant myself permission in the present to not pursue a goal or a passion or a project, and commit to it fully. And in contrast to that, and when I in 2016, I made a post in January as well, and it was one of those help posts. And I'm sure everybody who's listened to this, who's ever been on Facebook that have read someone looking for help, it was short and sweet. It was I am done hurting myself. I'm done hurting others. I apologize for the people that I have hurt. And if anybody knows any counselors, coaches, therapists, like any modality, I was not picky because I made the decision that I wanted to make a pivot. Then
Yeah.
it was just finding the ways to do that. Then after 2016, my headspace was much more level. And between 2016 and now was the development of NLSE through my own either personal experience where I've been a breathwork practitioner. I've been practicing breathwork for 9 years and I host workshops and community sessions. And then I ended up getting into words, stories, and breath and how the words can have such an influence on our behavior and our mindset and our opinion of ourselves, which is
Yeah.
how I define mindset. So reflecting back now, I truly believe that I could step into a time machine, go see my 26-year-old self, and then have absolute confidence in my competence that I could help this fella go from a loser to a winner.
Yeah.
Because as much as people like to think it's not nice to call someone a loser, when we're looking in the mirror, we know if we're a winner and a loser, and we have
Yeah.
no issues calling ourselves a loser.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to change that out, and here we are. Oh, and so the story and the words, that one I learned through a certification mentorship known as the Enlifted method, ENLIFTED. So
Right.
that's where I learned how to incorporate the words, so the story work and the breath work, to put them together.
Yeah. Incredible. And in terms of what I would like to go back, not to spend too much time in the past. What was the catalyst for your post in 2016 that gave you that subconscious or conscious awareness to say something has to change today?
I was in a very tumultuous relationship, plural, and it didn't exactly, as you would imagine, if someone can pull off a relationship with three people within the relationship, one thing I know for sure is that there's a heavy amount of communication going on between the three.
Yeah.
There is not. I was the person that was flip flopping, and I didn't like that, and I didn't want to take that into my next relationship or future relationships.
Yeah.
So it was probably the most I've hurt and the most I've been hurt at the same time, for like outside of like uncontrollable stuff like deaths and stuff like that, like the intense stuff. But at that point in time, that was, and it was just, so everything was done at one point where it just completely ended. And then it was just free reign into my development.
Right. And in terms of the response to your post, was it what you were expecting?
It was awesome actually. I got a lot of folks that were supportive, a lot of hearts, a lot of hearts.
Yeah.
A lot of cares, which is nice. Great suggestions,
Yeah.
a variety of suggestions. I was very happy about that, where the folks that I get to have on my Facebook are folks that have variety as well as versatility. So I thought that that was really good, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
And there was one in particular that stood out, and it was my buddy Sean, who prior to this, we did Tough Mudders together. So I ran Tough Mudders with as a fitness test for
Yeah.
my clients back in my personal training days. So the biggest group I had was 18 people. It was freaking sick. And
Yeah.
they just all went through it. Only one person hurt their knee, so that was okay. I hope she's doing good now. Uh, and he was on it. And then after this, and he's not built as a runner. He's 210, 220. I don't think he's been under 200 for a while. Maybe he is now. And he's about 6'2", and he's got muscle. So he's got a lot of weight. And so he dove into ultra marathon, and it was crazy. One of those things that he decided to do was the world's toughest mudder. I have the bib right there.
Yeah.
Was the world's toughest mudder. And he did it by himself. And then for a year, he's like, come on, man, come on, man. I'm like, no, I don't want to. No, I don't want to. No, I don't want to. And then he saw the post, immediately messaged me. He's like, hey, man, do you want to do a tough mudder? I'm like, son of a bitch. I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was the message that got me to do, or that inspired me to do the world's toughest mudder.
Yeah.
It was legit a brother of mine that was like reaching out and being like, bro, like, we can do this. And the biggest takeaway from that race, because the World's Toughest Mudder is a 24-hour obstacle race.
Right.
So you do it as many rounds as possible within 24 hours. And with that whole experience, because I haven't pushed myself physically with like to that umph, I did workouts and I did competitions. I did not do that very
Yeah.
often. But however, I was used to Tough Mudder obstacles, so that's where I shined. I did not take a penalty loop. I took every obstacle. And so because before that point I didn't have a practice where I could alleviate the emotional intensity, that emotional buildup, the stuff that's like lodged up in your chest. You can feel it
Yeah.
on your shoulders. It weighs you down. It's almost like the air around you weighs it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I did not know this before. Now I understand it reflecting on it. So I see how the system worked. And so the biggest thing was that it provided me an opportunity to break down the body to build up the mind. It gave my body an outlet to flush all that pent up stories, experiences, narratives, my own thoughts. I experienced thoughtlessness. I
Right.
experienced presence because I
Yeah.
was just not wanting to die. And that really had a huge, that was a very big pivotal catalyst moment in my life, and that's why I refer to it as after Tough Mudder and world after or before.
Yeah, and in terms of, and I love that genuine pivotal moment of before and after. I know we chatted about that when we were getting to know each other before we started recording. And what would you say would be like the biggest change in you post World's Tough Mudder, if you were to hone it down to one?
I have absolute control of my reality.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. As you were saying the question, it kind of started coming up in the belly, or from the belly up into the chest, and I was
Yeah.
like, this could be a weird answer. I'm gonna go with it though. I think that's what it would be.
Yeah.
Oof, dude, man, you brought a cool feel. Thank you for that.
Oh,
Thank you.
excellent. Excellent. I'm glad. And it really, breaking down the body to free the mind, is that where you're leaning in to the breath work? Was that a natural, affinity with breath work where you started to see and feel the benefits of that concept?
Wasn't planned, and by accident, yes.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the aspect of NLSE, whereas the somatic, it's of the body,
Mm.
and it is allowing the oxygen where we can get high off our own supply,
Yeah.
and allowing that oxygen to start to move things around internally without a huge, intense experience like the world's toughest mutter.
Yeah.
It's definitely like it's a practice that can be daily. I do it daily where it's now autotelic, where it's just embedded in my behavior. If I want to procrastinate, I'll do breath work. If I
Right.
want to regulate myself, I did breath work before I did this because I wanted to make sure that I was in my grounded state to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So I use the breath work as a tool in different ways because there's different modalities of breath work. Some can upregulate, some can downregulate, some can neutralize, and so I'll just pick the one that I want in accordance.
Yeah.
And when I first got into breath work, whew, I was big time getting oxygenated, grounded. I was able to open up my heart, like I could feel my heart just boof, like
Yeah.
pump so much harder in like a good way. It wasn't like a oh I'm gonna have a heart attack. It was like oh that's pleasant, that's nice.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and then I just kept the practice up.
Yeah. And what inspired you to take the avenue and the path of breath work?
I think it started pretty early where my stepdad planted the seed pretty early on. I believe I was in my mid-teens. Yeah, because we were still living at the house. So it was mid-teens and he's Dutch.
Right.
So he's straight out of the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And he told me about Wim Hof.
Right.
So I learned of Wim Hof, the Iceman, and at the time I was like, "Oh no, that's impossible." And then it was 20, I would say uh, 2016 for sure, and I believe 2015 I started dabbling. That's when YouTube was there, and then Wim Hof was doing his thing more often. And then there was more varieties that were being posted. So I would just do the guided follow along sessions, and I would do in person ones to the best of my ability. And
Mm.
then I have a couple of friends of mine that have a variety of certifications in their modalities, so I go learn from them too.
Nice. Excellent. So for folks, just in terms of a summary, for folks who aren't familiar with breath work, and I know you've explained a wee bit about it in terms of your regulation and what it is you need it to do for you at a certain point in time, what would you say, the main point of breath work is, the main benefits of breath work, the main skills and abilities you would need to do? I mean, we're all doing breath work every day, or we're not alive, but it's not that type and style. There's more intention to it. Just a wee bit of an overview.
Totally. Uh, I look at breathwork as the very first skill that we learn
Yeah.
and the very skill that we practice the least.
Right. Oh, a nice way to put it.
Thank you. And so the way that I describe breath work is that it is a way to go from being a thermometer where you're reacting to the internal external stimuli,
Yeah.
where you're breathing high and tight or high and tight in the chest where you're
Mhm.
going to fight, or you're breathing low and slow in the belly and you're good to flow.
Mhm.
And so when we are reacting to the internal external stimuli, where whether it's something that's outside of us, it could be a noise, car crash, it could be a baby crying, could be nothing at all.
Yeah.
And then we have our internal stimuli, which stems from our words and our stories. Those are going to have the biggest impact on how we feel in the moment. And so I I look at breathwork as the tool to turn us into a thermostat
Mhm.
where we can regulate our internal temperature to our liking. We can adjust our temperature.
Yeah.
So the way that I look at breath work as a tool with including the modalities, so breath work as the umbrella term and then all the modalities included, I would say that it is the way to set, wow, it's a way to set your internal setting. That's what it is.
Nice. Excellent. Excellent. I do love the analogy of the thermometer and the thermostat. I think that could certainly resonate with almost everyone. The ability to say today I'm a wee bit chilled. I want to just raise the temperature a little bit, or actually it's getting a wee bit warm in here. And I'm just going to bring it down and just
Mm,
paying that attention to the physical cues that you're being given, and maybe sometimes it's internal cues as well. But, if you're talking about heat specifically, in terms of the analogy, it's something I think is very, very relatable. So then you take the breath work, and you mentioned, of course, a couple of times in terms of the story work, element of that. What then inspired you to meld them together to get to your passion now, which is the NLSE? Like, was that something, was it a catalyst? Was there like an event for that where you thought, wait a second? You know, what was that journey like?
Uh, so when I was learning story work, I had breath work separately up when I was just hosting workshops. And then with the story work aspect, there's a reading and breathing connection.
Right,
And then we use the breath to integrate rather integrate the stories or create distance from the stories.
right,
And so there's that where breath was already incorporated into story work. So if it was a dish, then it was something that goes together like peanut butter and jelly.
yeah,
And so it already worked by itself. And then when I went to an event, uh, there was Brandon Powell was hosting the breath sesh, and it was a solid long breath sesh, and then there was story work around it as well. And they had it they had the breath work at the end of the story work.
right,
And so I had that experience, and I was like, this is freaking sharp. And I also noticed that folks were not connecting the two.
right.
And I think that uh, when there is a physiological component to a conceptual model, then it reinforces the concept in the frame
Mhm.
because it's not just thinking about it, it's not absorbing the knowledge and regurgitating, it's embodying the knowledge or
Yeah,
embodying the stories. And so then I also watched a podcast, or maybe I read an article because I really like to dive into psychology often. It's so cool. And
yeah,
there's a very large psychological component to this. And someone utilized um, physiological size for 5 minutes prior to a session. And so a physiological sigh is to downregulate. It's most recognized when people are bawling their brains out and the body forces them to take a breath. So if they're crying their eyes out, oh my God, that's a physiological sigh. So
right.
that's our autonomic system. That's our body forcefully doing it, and we can consciously do it.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I did this. I did that, and then I did my own story work session just to experience and experiment.
Yeah.
And what I found was that it down regulated where it's neutralization. So I'm purposefully aiming for in the sessions to bring the participant to neutral. So if it's a scale of 1 to 10, 4, 5, and 6, that's where the sweet spot is, the Goldilocks.
Yeah.
If they're feeling less, they're feeling low, they're feeling down, then we're going to do an upregulating breath to get them up to 4, 5, 6. And if
Mhm.
they're really excited and pumped up and wound up, uh, then I like to down regulate so that they're to that 4, 5, 6. So
Right.
it's not too low, it's not too high, it's just right.
Yeah.
And then from there, when we go into the stories, no matter how much it may hurt, haunt, taunt, annoy, it could be a regret, it could be a bad dream. Folks are going in with a calm state of being to be able to detach themselves away from the stories in order
Mhm.
to allow that processing of the story.
Yeah.
So I just recognized that it supercharged both. And then
Yeah.
that also influenced it. And then my frame that I perceive things through as well is through art, science, and magic. And I think that when things can collaborate and
Mhm.
they fulfill those three components, then there's an opportunity for supercharges. So, for example, it's similar to how nowadays they're doing ketamine connected therapy. They're doing psilocybin connected breath work. They're doing whatever sort of modality.
Mhm.
And so, what I wanted to create was something that could interconnect with each because I'm going down to first principles. So, first principles is the very root of things, and it's our word and our breath.
Mhm.
Speech communication is a skill that we learn soon after we're born as well.
Yeah.
And so then we could just practice it over time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fascinating. And in terms of story work, since we talked about breath work earlier, story work in and of itself as a discipline, as a practice, what does that involve? What does it entail? Where are the challenges that you see people, encountering in terms of their stories?
Totally. The things that any resistance that we have to doing a thing to get us to where we want to go has a precursor that is a story that's inspiring us to not partake in that behavior or to partake in that behavior.
Right.
So, words, stories, and breath influence our thoughts. And the way that I like to think of words, and it's a fitness reference because I was a trainer for last 13 years
Yeah.
until retiring, and now I'm doing this, so it's
Yeah.
sweet. Uh, I how the body's built up by carbs, fats, proteins. Those are the macronutrients of the body. They're the building blocks of the body.
Yeah.
And the quality of those macronutrients are going to impact the quality of the body.
Yeah.
So, words are, to me, the ethereal macronutrients of the mind. If we feed our mind quality words, we're going to have quality thoughts. If we feed our mind shit words, we're going to have shit thoughts.
Yeah.
So when we can separate, let's say, for example, what I teach is about soft talk and solid talk. Soft talk is ambiguous. There's no certainty. Solid talk is secure. It's confident. It's trusting in one's competence and decision making. So
Yeah.
an example would be, I might be able to make it to the party for 5 p.m.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I
Yeah.
could, should, hopefully, possibly make it to the party at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
rather than a solid talk sentence or statement, which would be, I'm going to make it to the party for 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And so when we remove soft talk and we focus on solid talk, and with that as well, if someone's actually undecided and they use soft talk, as long as it's accurate and it's not a way to get out of going or a
Yes.
way to get out of saying to the person they're not going,
Yeah.
then what happens is, as a happy side effect, is that it's similar to microdosing decision making. We become more competent in the small decisions, which are going to make our competence and confidence in making bigger decisions better because we trust ourselves to make decisions because we're not speaking softly to ourselves, we're speaking
Yeah.
with solidity. Solidity. I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to go with it.
I believe it is. I believe it is. And that's fascinating. It's so insightful in terms of the soft and the solid talk. And my partner, she's a very soft talker, and it will be a case of, yeah, I think that could maybe happen. And my response to that will be, when will you know? And then
Yeah.
she kind of catches herself and she'll say, "Oh, right, okay, yes, that we can make that happen." Or I hope so. Let me go check these two things first and then decide and determine whether it's actually going to happen. And I love it. It reminds me of a book I read quite some time ago, and it was called, what was it called now? I think it was called The Amazon Way. And it was someone who used to work at Amazon who said, this was my experience, working with Jeff Bezos and doing everything that we did. And it was all these different chapters. And one of the chapters was it starts with a number. And basically, Jeff Bezos would go into a session and say, for example, how many sales did we make? How many new customers did we onboard? Whatever it is, some empirical, fact that he's looking for. And then his people would say, great question, boss, and I'm glad you asked that. And he would say, the answer starts with a number. Yeah, but there's just a bit of context there. The answer starts with a number, and then by all accounts, he was a bit of a shouter, So then he would eventually just say the answer starts with a number, and it's such a simple concept in terms of just answer the question. What time are you going to be home? You know, well, I'm going to leave the office at 5:45, and then I've got two stop-offs and stuff. The answer starts with a time. Just tell me what time it is, and then you can manage my expectations. It's so simple, isn't it? But now that you've educated me on, soft versus solid, it's tangible. The ability to be able
Totally.
to say, you're softening this up here when I need something a bit more solid. I love that. In terms of the types and styles of clients that you have with your NLSE work that you're doing right now, Kyle, what does that look like? Is it a variety? Is there a specific niche or a particular type and style of person that's really interested in this?
A variety of people that have three common traits. And the three common traits that the folks have is an openness to explore.
Mm.
They have a sincere desire to make changes, and they are okay with testing their pain tolerance or their pain threshold
Yeah,
and pushing it.
yeah,
For the folks I work with, I have them in predominantly in two phases. There's three phases in total where it starts with getting folks unstuck, and that's decluttering the mind in order to throw the party.
mm,
Or it could be learning how to become a dragon rider rather than a dragon slayer of a story to get the gold.
yeah,
Then we go into celebrating the wins and celebrating progress, celebrating themselves, celebrating the others, celebrating whatever they've done.
yeah.
Because I believe that when we create distance from the moments in time that we have been proud of ourselves, then we forget that they exist.
Yes.
And then the third phase is we go into goals, and I have a frame for that as well. And that also includes stories. So that one is a target story plan, or another way I like to look at it is a focus, frame, and floor.
Right,
And those three F's, super solid book. It's by actually check out any of his books. Dr. Benjamin Hardy,
right.
really cool guy. He has like a wealth of knowledge, and so he very much inspired like my process for developing what I want to do as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much how those work. And then the difference, there's no difference in the framing for how we do the story structures.
Okay.
There's a four-step method for that.
Yeah.
However, it has different effects depending on the theme that we're pursuing. So if it's a story that it's an ouchie story, a story that sucks, could be
Yeah.
a trauma, it could be the worst day that you've ever experienced. It creates a distance from those, hence get unstuck. We're not stuck to the story anymore. We're actually out of the story. And
Yeah.
then we've processed or integrated the unmetabolized emotions. And then when it goes to celebrating the wins, we take that same story framework and it brings those closer and creates more meaning.
Right.
And then we have a different perspective of ourselves where if we're always feeling crappy about ourselves, we're always going to be looking for evidence to reinforce our
Yes.
judgment on ourselves of being crappy.
For
So
sure.
then when we bring the evidence to counter that, then we have the true story. We don't have a story, like a one-sided story. We have the whole book.
Yeah.
And so then we could see ourselves from an objective point of view. So I like to think that when we start to think about our thinking, we can readjust and direct our thinking or rebuttal intrusive thoughts,
Yeah.
or we can translate harmful thoughts or stories into helpful just by changing words. And then it has a whole different effect on our state of being, which is going
Yeah.
to get us to be more action prone towards doing what we want to do.
Yeah. And a lot of this, what I really love about the concept, and I'm so glad you said thinking about thinking, because I know we had chatted about that previously, and it's something that it seems to me, it seems so obvious in the moment that if our thinking isn't serving us, then we just do something about that. I just don't know how many people are actually genuinely sitting down and taking the time to even understand what that construct means, understand how it is or isn't serving them, and what it is that they can do about that. And just the the stuck versus unstuck part gives a real sense, and hopefully, I'm assuming for your clients as well, that opportunity to know this is within you. This is within your control. This is within your purview of influence. There is nothing that you can't do about this to give yourself a better experience and more chance of success going forward. It's just prizing that out of them at that particular time. Do you notice that? Do you see? You must literally be able to see that physical growth and emotional growth through the program that you operate.
Totally. And it is interesting because when I'm working with someone, I'm just the objective observer.
Yeah,
So it's my intention to not drama or trauma bond with who I'm working with.
yeah,
And so that way I'm the foundation. I'm able to create the set and settings so that people can explore their stories.
yeah,
So it's interesting because I still see the person that I'm working with, and we go into the stories, and everything's conceptual. So anything that I work with is all in the brain.
mhm.
And I actually found a little struggle with this because although I'm building something, I'm not physically building something. I can
Yes.
build minds. So I wanted to develop a hobby. So I started growing cannabis plants.
Oh, there you go. That's
Yeah.
the done thing these days, isn't it?
Yeah. 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 Dude, cannabis connected storywork breathwork. Hell yeah.
There you
Do
go.
that. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
Um, and so I see the ahas and the emotions that come up, and they just are, it's just so cool seeing it because I can't feel it, I can see it. However, I know what it feels like for me to feel it.
yeah,
And it's with anyone that I work with, my intention at the beginning and all the way through, but especially at the beginning, is to collect as many aha moments as possible.
mhm.
Because an aha moment is a pattern interrupt. It
Right.
was two seemingly distant ideas that connected, and then we got a bigger picture.
Yeah,
Or there was a freshness and yeah.
yeah,
So it's pretty cool. So what I do is I'll only venture into stories as much as a person wants to venture into them. I'm
yeah,
not going to force. No amount of money can be given to me for me to go into a story that someone doesn't want to do.
yeah,
And so there are some times where we're really close to hit like popping that balloon. Like
yeah,
we're really close to popping the balloon, and the person's not ready for that yet.
yeah,
Because something that is interesting is when people have those aha moments. I believe the outcome that all of us want, that we go into these modalities for, is abundance. And we want to have like peace, and
mhm.
we want to have presence, and we want to be here. We want to live.
Yeah,
And some folks are not ready for that because it is a new world in contrast to what the world is that they already experienced. It's tough. It is tough for people. It's because it's the devil you know compared to the devil you don't. It
definitely.
is tough for some folks to not want to find evidence to support their destructive stories or their contaminated stories rather than their redemption stories.
Yeah, because it's unknown and it's change and it's some sort of metamorphosis. And sometimes, I mean, it's a genuine thing that people fear failure and can equally fear success. because they don't know what it looks like on the other side, and better the devil you know, the devil you don't. So when you have the clients almost at that spot where you're thinking it's so close and it's their journey. So as you say, if you or they need to back off at some point to say this is actually part of the journey to get to that almost sweet spot, and then I wouldn't say regress, but then to retreat from it for now, learn what you need to learn from that, with a view to success at some point down the line. Was that the pain part that you were talking about your model? In terms of being open to experiencing pain, or is there a physical component to that as well?
Uh, no, it's mostly all on the inside. It's not so much on the physical part.
Yeah,
And what that is it is a caricature of how we perceive our present self,
yeah,
and us doing the things we want to do in order to get to where we want to go. We have to become the person it takes to get that.
yeah,
If we do the exact same thing we've been doing, we're only going to get the same result.
100%.
So identity has to die.
Hmm.
So this character, the present self, there's aspects and characteristics, not the whole self. And this is metaphorical, by the way.
Yeah,
Just saying. Uh, and so with that pain that we feel, that pain, this just like that resistance from either fear, rejection,
yeah,
um, judgment, or procrastination, which I like to call active participation in not getting to where we want to go,
yeah,
in delaying our own gratification.
yeah.
Um, and so when when folks are going into some stories, whether they some stories reinforce the person that we are.
Mhm,
And if we are to put those books on the shelf, then we no longer have our evidence to support our present behavior.
mhm,
And so if someone doesn't have, so yeah, I've seen this a couple times. When someone does not no longer has that past anchor that's preventing progress in the present,
yeah,
then the person realizes, oh shit, I am the one responsible for doing the thing to get the thing.
yeah,
And so some folks are not prepared to handle their responsibility.
yeah,
They have great power and they want no responsibility.
yeah. Definitely. It's so interesting. I was just chatting with someone last night on a course I was delivering, and I was talking about willingness and control, and what's the only thing, and it's somewhat cliche for people in our type and style of industry, self-help, self-development and such. And I said, look, the only thing you can control in your life is you, and you're willing. So then imagine you're trying to, and I'll just say, air quotes, control other people, whether you're a leader in an organization, whether it's your family, whether it's your community, your friends group, whatever that looks like. And they're not either not willing or not as willing to do the work. Then you start to, basically layer on or compound on the thoughts, feelings, actions, emotions that go with that when you're like, why don't you just do what I say? Why don't you understand this? Like, this is a no-brainer. Whatever thoughts go through your head at that time. And really, what I was trying to basically say was, you need to give yourself a break. You need to give other people a break. You need to understand their journey, their lens, their purview is different to yours. And that doesn't mean give them, complete autonomy to go and do and be whatever it is they want to be. If they're there to perform a role, they have to perform the role. You have to explain it in a way that would be meaningful for them to be able to be motivated to actually do that. But just the willingness of, right, I am here. I am willing to get uncomfortable. I am willing to experience the pain. I am willing to be open, and I am desperately looking for something else that would maybe serve me a bit better. Now, what do we do? That's the start. So then, when you think about the general public and the annoyances that you might get from people that you're dealing with in your general life, it's just not as clear cut as certainly I thought it used to be way back in the day. I thought you were either helpful or unhelpful. I thought you were either good or bad. I thought, you know, there was a very clear delineation, and it's nothing of the kind anymore,
That's cool, man.
you know?
Something else that just popped up that I think is cool, share, because it was you pointed where it was pointing out to the people outside as well. The folks that are within our vicinity, or the folks closest to us, will behave around us as we have taught them to behave around us.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And to add to that too, because I think that when we're pointing a finger at someone, there's three fingers pointing back at us.
exactly.
And so if we're projecting and we're
Yeah,
not reflecting, I believe that could be where trouble comes in.
yeah,
Because in my opinion, it is the characteristics that we both admire and resent that we recognize in others can only be characteristics that we recognize in ourselves. Otherwise, we'd have no reference.
yeah.
And so, however, our relationship is with those particular characteristics, we're going to train people to behave in a variety of ways around us.
Definitely, definitely. And just to go back before we wrap up today, I loved what you said about the caricatures. And you know, and I was delighted actually that you mentioned that, because that word was kind of floating in my head as we were chatting. And it's a word, honestly, that I have used for decades, where when I see, especially when I would see some kind of, you know, what I would call bizarro behavior by people, you know, something completely out of the norm that isn't congruent with what we're trying to do or what we're trying to achieve, you know, I would be like, what happened? What happened? You know,
Yeah.
you're kind of acting like a caricature of yourself. And I knew specifically what I meant, which was, you know, basically what you were saying. You know, you've created this, it's almost like persona of, this is what it has to be. This is who I should be. So therefore, I will lean in to that particular caricature. And I don't know, honestly, Kyle, if it actually landed the way that it was supposed to land. Because when I was saying that to people, I wasn't trying to insult or in any way, but I was trying to evoke some sort of self-awareness, evoke an opportunity to reflect and say, actually, what am I doing? Why am I behaving like that? Is that what I genuinely believe? Is that the experience I want myself and others to have? I don't know that I managed to quite get there. So hopefully maybe some of those people will listen to this podcast and realize what it really was, because it wasn't an insult. It wasn't an opportunity for a circuit break to say stop and, you know, shock someone into thinking or behaving differently. It was just think for a
Totally.
second. Is this it? You know, it's just
I have,
incredible.
uh, if, well, it would be short. I have a character construction frame that I work on too, because I
Yeah,
think character creating is, it creates, uh, it creates characters that embody particular traits
yeah,
that we either want to reject or resonate with.
yes,
So I have a three frame where there's the primary, the rival, and the role model. So
right.
the primary is who you're speaking to and who I'm speaking to is
Yeah,
the primary executive decision maker of the body.
yeah,
It is the judge.
yeah.
Then we have the inner rival. My character's inner rival name is Mr. Simpleton because I was a pansy ass back in the day, and I just don't want to be that. And so, so that's the persecutor.
Right.
And so then we have the role model, and my role model is the dapper dude.
Yeah,
And that role model is the defendant. So the primary shows up as a judge. Every morning, the prosecutor comes in stacking evidence on the table as to why we are not the person we wish we want to be.
yeah,
Then then the role model comes in and shows the other stack of papers also providing the evidence showing that we are who we say we are.
yeah,
It's our In my opinion, it's our duty as the judge to pick who wins that court case.
yeah,
And I also believe that decisions are the nutrients that feed the rival of the role model. And
yeah.
whichever one gets fed the most is based off of the decisions that we make.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. And that goes back to your what you were mentioning earlier in terms of, you know, like the micro decisions and being comfortable and confident in your process and the outputs and how you manifest whatever the outcome is based on the decision into more confidence when the decision gets a little bit larger. and larger from there. I love the connectivity in that. You know, I could genuinely, literally talk about this stuff all day. And I think, you know, I believe for a fact, Kyle, that we're just scratching the surface here. You know, so I'd love to have you back on at some point in the future to continue the conversation. But for now, before I let you go, where can people find out more about you?
Dapper Dude Kyle on almost every social media platform. Aim to keep it consistent.
Mm.
I'm really quick with messages on Instagram. That one's a really quick one.
Yeah.
And then my threads, which is Instagram as well, has a lot more of my written stuff. So that one really, that one's a good one. I enjoy that. I'm also on YouTube, and there you can find videos on, well, a podcast that I hosted last year. Took
Yeah.
a break from podcasting so I could focus on my practice.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. Dapper Dude Kyle everywhere.
Wonderful. And I'll get those reference points to the in the show notes so that people can absolutely get you. Kyle, my friend, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Likewise, dude. It was awesome. I'm very grateful to be here. It was a great way to, well, the sun was coming up as we were chatting, so it's a beautiful sunrise, I guess now.
Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. And while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.